Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the World Through Electrospecs podcast. I'm Caleb. A few orders of business before we get started this episode. First of all, I'm sorry it took so long for me to edit this and actually get it posted. This is not going to be a regular occurrence, however, that will also happen next week. Pete and I are going out to Boston this week, as we've been talking about over the past few weeks, months, whatever, that we've been recording this show. So we will be gone during the time that we normally do our recording. That being said, even though the episode next week will be coming out late, we will be having some interesting guests, some really cool guests on the show moving forward over the next few weeks, starting with this episode. This episode I joined up with my buddy Brendan. He's a really cool guy. He's met a lot of cool people. The episode turned out a lot differently than I thought it was going to turn out. I didn't really know what I was walking into, though. I'm really happy with how the episode turned out, though. Basically, I thought the episode was going to be a lot of him talking about people that he's met and celebrities that he's met, but it actually ended up turning into a really cool conversation about music and what not to do at Comic-Con. So the episode's really awesome. It's a lot longer than episodes typically are, but that's okay. I'm still happy with how it turned out. There's no post-show for this episode because it's a very long episode, but to those of you who are still subscribed on Patreon, I sincerely appreciate it. We're going to keep the post-show episodes coming in the future, and appreciate your support. We really, really do. Another order of business. For some reason, there were all sorts of technical issues with this particular episode. First off, it's a remote episode. You can't really expect audio to be too great in a remote episode. However, there's just something with the audio compression on his end. I know he was recording with GarageBand. I've never recorded with GarageBand, so I don't know what the settings could have been. I also know that he normally is recording music, not necessarily people, so there might be an issue there. I'm not sure. I just know that the audio kind of cuts in and out weird in specific areas. We had a few video issues, and also for whatever reason, camera one that was focused on him was very red, and I ran it through some video filters, but man, was it red. It was really hard for me to really color correct that properly. I couldn't really get anything going in my favor. Camera 2 is perfectly fine. It looks pretty natural. It's not as good quality as camera 1 because it's the Panasonic, it's not the Canon. But for some reason, camera 1, that Canon, man, was that video was really red. So even though I ran it through some filters and I tried to do some video cleanup on it, it's still, even after color correction, it's still pretty red. So that's unfortunate. But regardless, audio issues aside and video issues aside, I am really happy with how this episode turned out. The content is good. So I'm sorry for the video watchers. If that color difference really bothers you, I recommend checking out the audio version. And for you audio listeners, there's nothing much you can do there. I'm sorry about the audio, but definitely please bear with it because it was a fantastic conversation. It's a long conversation, but it's a fantastic conversation. Very, very good insight on Brendan's music career and just all of his experience with Comic-Con back in San Diego. Awesome dude. So I'm going to stop chatting at you. I'm going to get this episode started. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and yeah, enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to the World Through Electrospecs podcast. I'm Caleb.
I'm Brendan.
Oh, you caught on real quick. You catch on pretty quick, kid.
Sometimes.
Welcome to the show. So today I have a, not necessarily replacement, but a guest host. Pete's not with me this week, and I'm recording in a totally different studio. I'm here with Brendan, my friend and fellow Legion member, and used to be townmate, but then I moved 2 hours away, so...
Yeah, I didn't take offense at it.
It wasn't because of you.
Yeah, it smells funny around here, so I get it.
Yeah. I used to live around here, though, and it does seem like it's... Like, the roads are getting a little bit worse, and my mom actually used to work for the police department, and she's like, yeah, it's getting... So the people that she knows from that job, she remembers that it's getting a little bit iffy, so... Thankfully, you're moving.
I am.
You don't have to deal with it anymore.
I am, yeah.
But... So I don't know if you've ever, if you've checked out the show or not, but basically, no real topics. It's a very laid back, relaxed show. It always has been. I had this show running a while ago with a couple other different hosts, and I had a few pretty good runs. I had a run with the first host, and that was about 20 episodes long, and then I had another run that was about 20 episodes long as well. So far, Pete's been the best co-host I've had, and
all right, Pete.
Yeah, even though we've been running for just about 3 episodes now, it feels like it's the most promising. There's something about talking to Pete that we just can't stop talking. But every now and then, I am going to have these instances where Pete's not available. I'm going to be recording with other people. Thankfully, you have an amazing studio in here to record in too.
Thanks. It gets the job done. It's small, but it
gets the job done.
Yeah, it works.
I remember the other day we were sitting at breakfast. Haley and I ran into you guys at breakfast. Hadn't seen you in a while. We were sitting there eating breakfast. All of a sudden, Haley's like, "Is that Brendan Prout?" And I'm like, "Turn around." We were sitting next to you guys the whole time we were eating. None of us ever realized it.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah,
it was fun.
You were behind me, and like my back of my head was facing you, so we had no idea. But we were talking then, and your wife mentioned something about you being the king of the humble brag.
Yeah.
And here you are again.
Yeah.
This awesome studio. You're like, yeah, it gets the job done.
It's a product of many other people investing in me over the years, so I try not to take too much credit for having done anything other than put it all together.
I could see where that I can see where that comes from, because like Pete's studio that we normally record in, it's Pete's studio, and a lot of his stuff is funded through being an adult with an adult job in the real world, not being a college student like I am.
Right.
But a good portion of it is also funded through the school and through his work and through the things that he has to do for his job, and he's pretty humble about it too.
A lot of my equipment that I've gotten over the years has been because I have not been too proud to beg. Mm-hmm. So I've worked at a variety of churches over 25 years, and I have always been one who would go to the facilities guy and say, "Do you have somewhere a box of broken stuff that you're just never going to get around to fixing? Can I have some of this stuff?" Mm-hmm. And I've been very blessed that usually there is either a box or, in some cases, an entire room full of broken music gear that, I have a ball. Anything you want, take it. If you can fix it, awesome. If not, recycle it.
And you fix it.
And a lot of times I'm able to fix it, so a lot of my studio equipment has been upcycled, old stuff that I've fixed, or I've gone to churches and that I wasn't even at. And I said, "Hey, I'm working in a ministry. We don't have much budget. Do you have any old gear you're not using that you might be willing to pass along to someone who could use it?" And I've found some very generous churches and organizations willing to pass stuff along. And then, of course, over the years, people have just given me stuff. So most of my guitars have been given to me at one point or another. And just very, very blessed in that regard to have some cool stuff, and have had people made an investment in me so that I can do what I do.
And you do have a lot of guitars in here.
I do have a lot of guitars.
How many guitars do you own?
Total?
Yeah, including the ones that I'm sure are not even here.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch at home as well. I think I'm around 20 guitars right now.
I thought I was crazy in high school for having 3,
Yeah. I mean, I started off with a really cruddy guitar that I bought from a bum in Balboa Park, and that was my acoustic guitar for like 10 years, and it was held together with duct tape and hot glue, and it was just really, it was falling apart. It never had a case. It had been cracked, it had been re-glued together. It was ugly, and I had a pastor come to me very delicately that I worked for and said, I don't know how to say this, but your guitar is embarrassing. I'm just going to be blunt. It looks really bad. If I got you another guitar, would you play it? And I was like, you're going to get me another guitar?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'll play it.
Yeah.
You don't care what it is? Nope. Give me a guitar. I'll play it. That's fantastic. If it plugs in and I can play it, yes. And so he got me that black one that's back there, the 12 string.
Nice.
And that had previously been the guitar that was hanging really, really high up on the wall at Guitar Center that you're not allowed to touch without asking for help.
The higher up ones.
Right? And so it was a super expensive guitar, and Robert Smith from The Cure played that guitar, and I was like, gosh, I would love to just, touch that guitar, but it was out of range. And then I walked in. It was funny because I walked in that morning to church where I was leading worship, and they had a habit of inviting guests to come and do the music without telling me. So I'd show up and there'd be like a band set up. I'm like, oh, we have a guest today. Cool. So bad communication, but a really nice church. So I show up and this guitar is on the stage. I'm like, oh, I wonder who the guest is today. He's got a nice guitar.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm just hanging out, and the pastor comes in. He goes, hey, aren't you supposed to be like warming up or sound checking, getting ready, rehearsing? And I was like, I'm just waiting to see who your guest musician is. And he laughed. He's like, there's no guest musician. It's like, well, then whose guitar is that? He goes, yours.
Oh, man.
And I was just blown away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, time after time, I've had other things happen like that where, an older couple in the church, like one gave me like 5 guitars. The guy was a guitar collector himself. And he passed away, and his wife was close with our family, and so she gave to her kids all the special instruments and was left over with a lot of guitars. And so she walked into my office with guitar cases and more guitar cases and more guitar cases. And she says, I think that my husband would want you to have these, so do with them as you will. And I was like, I kept one. That's that yellow one there.
Ooh, that's a nice honey mustard yellow too.
Yeah. So it's become one of my favorites. And then I gave away the others to various people who were involved in ministry, overseas missions and stuff. The same day that this gal walked in and gave me the 5 guitars, someone else walked in from the children's ministry, and she goes, I don't know if this is a weird question, but my daughter's going on a missions trip, and she's got it in her mind she wants to take a guitar to lead worship with and then leave it there, like give it to somebody so that they'll have a guitar to do worship in wherever it is they're going. And I was like, cool, pick one of those.
Yeah, I just so happen to have been given a few this
morning.
Yes,
exactly. I was wondering what to do with these. Now I know, so pick one of those.
Right.
Oh, I think she'll like the red one. Great, take it. And it's just sort of that. So I've had a lot of stuff that I've been able to pass along over the years, and some guitars have gone away and then come back to me. I had a garage sale find that's behind you on the wall, the white one.
This one?
Yeah, that I bought it for $100 at a garage sale. It's a $1,500 guitar.
Yeah.
And then I had
is that a
Fender Stratocaster?
But it's not a Squier Strat; it's an actual Strat.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's an '86.
Yeah, that's nice. I had a Squier Strat when I was younger, and that was my first.
Hey, there's something to be said for Squier. They make some nice stuff. I mean, it's just like everything. Fender, they make some really nice stuff, and they make some really cheap stuff now that is not really worth the expense. But Squier, they also make some really nice stuff that's pretty inexpensive.
I got it off of a friend too. So you were saying that your that guitar that you had that was replaced by the pastor, but it was kind of duct taped and everything.
Yeah.
That was your first guitar?
That was my first acoustic guitar.
That was your first acoustic?
Yeah.
Did you have an electric before that first acoustic?
I did. I was a violinist, classically trained.
Ooh.
I played violin, and up until
One day you took it off the neck and started strumming it on your lap.
No, so I was playing in an orchestra. And the first chair violinist, I'm still friends with him, his name's Jeremy Young, he shows up to rehearsal with an electric guitar and plugs into an amp and starts ripping some Van Halen. And I looked at the guitar and I looked at the violin and I went, this violin is not going to get me girls. And that was the moment. That was the moment. I started begging my parents, saying, "I want to play guitar. Get me a guitar." And so this is in the days of the Sears Christmas catalog, right?
Yeah.
So I picked out a guitar in the Sears Christmas catalog. I said, "That's the one. That's what I want for Christmas. I don't want any other presents. I want just that. Just that. Get me that." And so they made a deal with me because they expected, Sears catalog is not going to be a high quality instrument. Said, all right, we'll get it for you. And if you stick with it, and if you improve, if you get good, and if you're really serious, then we'll make the investment later on into a decent instrument.
Right. They need to see some input before they can get the investment.
Right. Yeah. So, and the funny thing is, they never did have the opportunity to take ownership of that, because I started playing like 3-4 hours a day on this thing. Really, and I was terrible for a long time because I didn't take lessons. So it was all self-taught. It was awful. And but a couple of years later, I had the opportunity to buy a Charvel Stratocaster pretty inexpensively. Someone from one of my friends who was upgrading his guitar. So he was moving from the Charvel to a Kramer, which was like a $900 Kramer back in the 80s. It was like, a lot of money. So anyway, I got the Charvel, and I bought that with my own money from mowing lawns and stuff. And then I just continued to upgrade from there. So I moved from the Charvel, I bought this Kramer, played that all through high school. In college, I started working at a high-end boutique music store in Santa Barbara and got really spoiled by playing very nice guitars, and I started to know the difference.
Started to get that feel.
Yeah. So I'd gotten that Van Halen guitar in high school, and then I went on a quest for the Red Music Man there, and it took about 7 or 8 years before I found one. They were very limited production. Most of them were purple or green or yellow or other colors. The reds were just super, super rare. And my wife ended up getting that for me as a wedding present.
Oh, that's awesome.
We found someone who had 2 of them. And his wife was making him get rid of one because you don't need 2 of the same guitar.
Right. So
my wife reached out to him, and he had put the story behind the guitar on the eBay listing of my wife's making me get rid of, so he was selling the nice one that had always been in the case. It had never been toured, it had never been worn or anything.
His mindset was probably
he was going to get the money for that
get more from it, and then on top of that, if you're a person who loves guitars, you're a person who loves the equipment, you have to sell one of them, sell the nice one, because you're going to continue to use the one that's kind of beat up a little bit more. You don't want to sell the beat up one and then start tearing down the nice one.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's the mindset. So, but my wife reached out to him, said, "Is there any way you might consider selling the beat up one? Because my husband won't care, and I can't afford the nice one. But we're getting married. He's a pastor. We've got no money. Here's what I can afford." And she made him an offer, and he took it. He said, I will keep the nice one. Thank you very much.
That's nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really nice. So got that. So all my guitars have a story of some sort or another. I think
And you painted that one yourself. We were talking about that earlier.
I painted the Van Halen one myself. And so it's I would consider about a 90% replica of one of Eddie Van Halen's guitars.
Where's the 10% coming from?
I changed some of the striping pattern intentionally to be a little bit different so that I could pick it out as this is my guitar, just in case it ever got stolen. I've had some instruments stolen over the years, and I wanted to be able to have a tell and say, here's the way I can identify that this is mine. So the slanted pickup versus a straight pickup, and then a few of the stripes that are white are not the same thickness as what it would be on Eddie's actual guitar. And usually people aim for exact replicas. So I just
you changed it up a little bit to keep your own
slight variation so that I can. Yeah, that's mine.
That's awesome. That's got a really cool story behind it too. Just the fact that you painted it yourself, the fact that you added its own little character to it. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun guitar. And then the Gibson, I had one. I'd saved up and bought one. We actually got it on sale at a store. It was a crazy marked down. And my wife was with me. I was supposed to just be buying strings. And I went in and they had this guitar, and she goes, "Oh my gosh, honey, isn't that supposed to be like $1,000 more?" Yeah, you should buy it. Well, okay. So I bought it, and
you're like, "I know you're my wife, but you should marry me."
Yeah, right. Keep her.
Yep.
So a few months later, we ran into financial trouble, and I ended up having to sell it to pay rent. And so, I mean, we got the investment back, that's for sure, because we made money on it. But, I was sad having to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And a few years later, we just happened to be sitting around talking with people about all the guitars I have. And she mentioned that one. She said, "What about the one that you had to sell so we could pay rent?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'll probably never have one of those again because they're too expensive." And someone from the church anonymously gave us a check so that I could replace it.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
One of the elders came walking up. He's like, "Hey, we had to kind of like, we got a specific donation, a designated gift for a particular purpose. It's for you, and you have to use it for this purpose. It's printed on the check." And I looked at it.
And it's from Anonymous.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So, been really blessed with the material, musical gear stuff. So that's been really...
That's really, really awesome. Let's let's take a second to digest that. Let's take a break real quick.
Yeah.
Just take a quick swap in the videos break, and we'll pick back up in a second.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Hey, Caleb, what is this on, what are we listening to here? What's going on?
Well, Mr. Connery?
Sure, yes, that's who it is.
We're listening to a new podcast
It's an old Sean Connery.
Yeah, that's okay. You're getting up there a little bit in age, Mr. Connery, but that's okay. No, what we're listening to is this newfangled thing that the kids are listening to these days called podcasts.
Podcast? What's it? All I know is some Red October thing. That's all I've heard about.
Well, the podcast is like a radio show, except people just kind of do it. They're not on any network or anything. They're just kind of doing it. And this is a new show that just recently got booted up.
Oh, that's amazing. Too bad they don't have agents. They need agents. That'll help out a lot, agents. No
agents. For the most part, people do this kind of stuff for free, but there is a way to support them.
Well, that's fantastic. I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
That's okay. So if you'd like to support the World Through Electrospecs podcast or any of the other things that the members of the podcast are working on at the moment, they actually have a Patreon page.
Well, that's fantastic. I'd love to support these guys. They seem like wonderful fellows.
Yeah, they sound awesome.
Yeah, and I sound horrible.
Yeah, it's okay. You have a cold, but that's all right. if you want to support them, you can go to one of the hosts of the show. His name is Caleb Ferris. You can go to his Patreon page, and it's just patreon.com/Caleb Ferris. And on that page, there are a few different levels of support that you can do to kind of give them a little bit of kickback for their show that they're doing.
It seems they need it. It seems like they're on a little bit of a budget,
Yeah,
a small one,
pretty small one. It's a pretty.
They can't hire actors, I hear.
Yeah, they have to resort to bringing in their own okay-ish voice actors. But basically, there are a few different ways you can support their podcast on Patreon. You have 4 different reward levels with various different rewards. You've got the Legend class reward, which is only $4 a month. And with that, you get credited in the credits of all future YouTube videos and on Caleb's personal website. The second level is $7 a month. It's the Scout class supporter level. You get previous rewards plus access to the Patreon exclusive World Through Electrospecs podcast post show, which will be at the end of the episode that we are surely playing this commercial in. The next level is the deluxe class reward level, which is $10 a month. You get access to everything I previously mentioned, plus you also get featured in a special thank you video in Caleb's YouTube channel as well at the end of every month. And then there's the Voyager class supporter level. That's only $20 a month. And at that, you get everything I previously mentioned, plus you get to watch the podcast being recorded in a live stream. And you also have access to a chat window where you can actually interact with them while they're recording the podcast. Essentially be a part of the show from that point forward. As they're recording, you're in that episode till the end of time.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And me being Sean Connery, it sounds perfect because all those levels are like so exploratory and that kind of stuff. I told you I'm old,
Yeah, Sean Connery.
Sean Connery, yeah.
Sean Connery. I must have mispronounced your name earlier.
Oh, well, yeah, just a little bit. That's okay.
That's okay. So yeah, like I said, you can go there. It
sounds like Extraordinary Gentlemen is what they sound like.
They do sound like Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, like they got to leave, We should let them get back to their show, though, so.
Yep. Again, though, it's patreon.com/Caleb Ferris. That's CalebFairres. And you can support the World Through Electrospecs podcast there. Mr. Sean Connery.
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery. So, aside from the music, aside from the guitars, you're into a lot of other stuff too.
Oh yeah.
A crazy amount of stuff. So, we never really did this at the top of the show. I feel like we should have, but we didn't. What I guess tell me a little bit about yourself. You came here from California.
Yeah.
You're you're actually one of the staff members. You said you were on the board actually of some sort, like just San Diego Comic-Con. The biggest Comic-Con, you know? Right.
Yeah, the Comic-Con.
Comic-Con.
I've been volunteering with Comic-Con since 1986. I've missed a year. A year. So, yeah.
So what's your longest run then, technically?
Well, I guess, so, just trying to think, I think it was 89 that I missed. Yeah, I missed 89.
So your longest run has been since 89?
So 90 until 2017, I've been there every year volunteering. I started off just as one of the cannon fodder day volunteers. You show up, you volunteer for 3 hours, and they give you a pass for the rest of the day to go do your thing. Mm-hmm. And about 2002, I started to get involved at a much deeper level. I co-founded a Star Wars club, the San Diego Star Wars Society, which was originally an official chapter of FanForce, from the Force.net website. Mm-hmm. And the official Star Wars fan club was dead at that point. They were publishing a newsletter, but there were no local gatherings. There was no active fan base. And so we there were 12 of us that originally kind of banded together on the old AOL chat rooms and decided, hey, we're locals, we should start a Star Wars club, let's do it. So we started the San Diego Star Wars Society, and I had volunteered to open up our church to host the meetings. So at about meeting number 3, when we needed to actually form a charter in order to be an official member of FanForce, in order to have the charter, you have to have club officers, so I got voted in as the vice chancellor. And that lasted about a year, and then the supreme chancellor stepped aside, and I was the president of the club for a number of years. We went through an interesting club split in, it was about 2008, I think it was. And so FanForce kind of went their separate ways, and the San Diego Star Wars Society became its own standalone 501c3 club at that point. And I continued to be involved with both for a number of years. Technically, I'm still part of FanForce, but not part of the leadership. So just a regular member, and still friends with folks who run the actual FanForce group. Got involved with the 501st early in that time, like 2002, 2003.
So you were a member of that was going to be one of my questions. You were a member of the San Diego Star Wars Society before getting involved in the 501st.
Yes, that's how I got introduced to the 501st. We had some 501st and Rebel Legion members join and show us what they were doing, and so we were very cross-pollinated in San Diego. So there are folks who are 501st, Mando Mercs, Rebel Legion, Saber Guild, San Diego Star Wars Society. I mean, they're totally cross-pollinated.
Yeah,
and
we all like the same thing.
I love it. Yeah, it's a melting pot.
We just like specializing in something.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally. So that was where I got introduced to people who were in the 501st. I actually became a member of Rebel Legion first because I figured that would be easier to make a Jedi costume.
That's what I was going to ask. What costume was it?
Jedi
costume? Was it a named costume? Or?
Prequel trilogy Jedi. No, I did a Corellian Jedi, so I could get green.
Gotcha.
And so still a member of Rebel Legion with that costume.
Do you still have your saber?
Yes,
I
do.
just lost that footage.
Yep.
That's okay. I don't know why it did that. May have ran out of SD card space. Again, like I said, I've been taking a lot of footage recently.
Yep.
That's all right.
Yep.
We'll be okay.
Session
we got the
issues.
other stuff. Yeah. But
yeah, anyway, so yeah, I did just a generic prequel trilogy Jedi, and then not long after that, had the opportunity to get some Stormtrooper armor and jumped on that, and joined the 501st.
Did you get it from another 501st member in the area, or?
Technically speaking, I'm not sure he was actually 501st. He's a very involved costumer. He may have been 501st. We're still friends. He's super talented cosplayer. I mean, he and his wife do incredible cosplays. But he had made...
Is he still doing stuff?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you remember his name?
He did some... Yeah, Donnie Stevenson. He did some Ghost in the Shell stuff.
Oh, really?
If you look online for Comic-Con 2017, Ghost in the Shell, you're going to find pictures of him, and it is... he did the...
Does he have his own Bato?
The eye prosthetics.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
Incredible.
Is it based off of the new movie, or is it based off of... Oh.
Yeah.
That's got to be cool.
It is incredible. He's got a super sharp eye for detail, and any cosplay he and his wife do. I mean, they've done like 300. I think they've you name it. They've done incredible stuff.
Right.
Harry Potter. That blow my mind every year. They do these amazing cosplays. So he had the armor, and I had the opportunity to get it from him, and he helped me trim it and adjust it to fit my body. I ended up having to replace a bunch of parts just because I've got a fairly long torso, and I think anyway, bits and pieces I've broken over the years too, because I've been real rough with the armor. Being in like Stormtrooper Olympics with kids and stuff, rough and tumble. Yeah. So anyway, that's how I got in, and then the 501st was pretty small at the time. We had just think we had just started to run out of triple-digit TK numbers. There were a few left, and they were asking if I wanted one. I'm like, no, I'd rather pick my own 4-digit number, thank you.
And see, I came around to just about 1,000 members later, because my 6830 is one of the last. I don't know why, even though it's in the 6,000s, I don't know why it's one of the last, but I remember very, very shortly, just a few months after I joined, was when we switched over to 5 digits too. And I remember being thankful that I got a 4-digit.
Right.
Because it's an even number, and I'm OCD about that kind of stuff.
Right.
But,
So yeah, I got involved with 501st, and that year, 2002, Comic-Con, it was just sort of like a big Star Wars year for us.
Mm-hmm.
We got to know Steve Sansweet was the director of fan relations for Lucasfilm, and Mary Franklin was running Bantha Tracks, and they were super enamored with local grassroots fan groups. So they got to know us, and there was an official block of Star Wars panels at Comic-Con, and they asked if we wanted to run a trivia panel. And they gave us complete leeway to do whatever we wanted to do. I said, yeah, that would be fun. And so I think the first year we did the trivia contest panel, I don't know, maybe we had 50 people in there, and I think we had 3 prizes. It was pretty low-key, and it was fun, but we all kind of decided, hey, we want to do this and do big next year. So we hit up all of the Lucasfilm licensees and vendors for donations, and the next year we had, between the art and the collectibles, we had something like $30,000 worth of prizes we gave away. And then it exploded. I mean, we'd have like a line, hundreds of people long, trying to get into the room to be in the panel. And so that was the beginning of me running panels at Comic-Con. And then that next year, somewhere right in there, my brother, who's also involved at Comic-Con pretty heavily, calls me up and he goes, hey, do you have any interest in being on the Comic-Con committee? I said, what are you talking about? He's like, the committee that runs Comic-Con. We plan it, we put it together. And I said, what's involved? He said, you have to come to a meeting once a month on a Sunday afternoon.
That's it.
I said, that's it? He said, yeah. I'm like, yeah, let me know when the next meeting is. So I went. You have to attend. Now the criteria now is a great deal more involved to be in. But
at the time, it was
at the time you show up for 3 meetings, and somebody can nominate you to join the committee, and they vote you on. Then they would bring you up front and say, why do you want to be on the committee? What's your favorite comic book? What are you reading now? What's your area you want to be involved with? And all of the different departments needed people. Like, we were all just always short-staffed. And so if you didn't have a department, you could say, well, I'm fair game. And the department heads would go, dibs! And, and they'd all come up to you and try to woo you into their department. And now
what were some of the different types of departments that you could get into?
Well, back there weren't as many back then. But, some of the ones that are mainstays, programming, deaf and disabled services, line control, registration, consuite. I think it might have been called hospitality back in the day. I mean, there's a variety. Logistics, the guest relations team. There was probably half the departments then that there are now.
Okay.
But and now it's a very different animal. Now, if you want to be on the committee, you have to have been involved as a volunteer already. Because people would show up to the committee meeting and say, I've never been to Comic-Con, but I'd like to be involved. So let me volunteer and get to know you. And we would let them. And I think over the years we discovered that led to a lot of miscommunications, people who really didn't understand what Comic-Con was about. So we kind of closed the door on that. So now you have to have been a volunteer for at least a year before you can be eligible to join the committee. You have to attend a certain amount of meetings. You have to go through an orientation class to understand what it is you're signing up for. You have to sign a pretty thick stack of non-disclosure agreements. And then you can possibly be on the committee, because now we have it number limited as well. And there are only X amount of spots. And as I understand it, there's a waiting list right now to get on the committee. And if you want to be on it, you have to wait your turn.
Right.
And when a spot comes up, then you have to be nominated by a committee member in good standing, and you have to go in front of the whole committee and kind of do the thing that we used to do and say, hi, I am, and here is how I am involved in Comic-Con, and here's why I'm passionate about Comic-Con, and here's what I can bring to the table, here's why I'd like to be a committee member. And then they vote yay or nay.
Right. Fascinating.
Yeah, so it's a pretty...
So at what point in the game did you get that opportunity? Because you've been going since 87, you said?
Right. I sort of was loosely aware of a committee, but I was not involved with it. I was just a day volunteer. So I worked with the volunteers department. I would show up, say, where do you want me? And they'd throw me somewhere. Oh, you're going to go to gaming today, and you're going to run a gaming room. I'm like, okay, cool. Have you ever played Magic the Gathering? Nope. Fake it.
Yeah.
And so I'd be up there in the room, and they'd come, these folks that were playing come to me for a dispute. And, well, he did this, and he did this. I said, I rule in favor of him.
Yeah.
But there is no arguing.
Yeah, I don't know. But in your head, you're going, I don't know what I just gave him.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea. If it was D&D, I played D&D. I could do that. When they were doing like Pokemon, that was just starting to come around, and I was like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. And I would, I'd say, all right, you've got 30 seconds. Argue in favor of your point. 30 seconds, argue in favor of your point. And I'd say at the end of this mediation, my decision is final. You will go back to your game. And I'd just decide, and, usually one of them was unhappy, but said, well...
Somebody's going to be unhappy regardless.
Somebody's going to be unhappy either way, but the decision is final. Go play your game.
Yep.
And they've changed that around quite a bit now. Now gaming is staffed by people who really know the games, and they love the games, and they're invested in helping people. And it was very understaffed back in those days, so I could have been on... security before we started having to hire outside security. Stand here, make sure nobody comes through that door who isn't wearing a name tag. Okay.
That's as simple as it was.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot more going on.
There's a lot more going on. Yeah. The security checks for weapons and bomb-sniffing dogs. What are the current weapons
policies for, for a Comic-Con of that scale? Because I know for C2E2 here, kind of the biggest one we really have in this area is the one in Chicago, and they've changed their policies quite a bit on you can't carry prop weapons that look like a certain thing, you can't carry things made out of a certain material, that kind of stuff. Have things changed over the years for the granddaddy of Comic-Cons as well?
They have, and I believe we're still pretty much the precedent setter in terms of the reactions to policies. So sometimes there are conventions that have different policies based on folks did not like our policy, and so they respond to that by having a different policy. But for the most part, we want to make the convention a pleasant experience for everyone who attends, whether they're just an attendee, a cosplayer, a professional, an exhibitor, staff members, even our security folks. We want to make it a nice day for them, especially our professional law enforcement officers who are there. So we take a lot of feedback and constructive criticism from professional law enforcement. And, of course, the professional LEOs who are there have the ability to make a call on the scene and change the policy instantly if they think it needs to. But for the most part, we do not allow any real weapons that have been deactivated or demilled.
Yeah,
that's a change over recent years too.
That was okay to begin with.
As long as it was deactivated, a stormtrooper could have a demilled Sterling, and it wasn't a big deal. But we had a guy 5 years ago walking around dressed as G.I. Joe, and he had an actual AR-15, and
And it wasn't deactivated in any way.
Well, the verbiage of the policy at the point was not specific enough to say how it needed to be deactivated. So he had removed his bolt carrier group and said, well, it's deactivated. It cannot possibly fire in this condition. And that meets the criteria of the policy as it was. So we had to do a bit of a knee-jerk policy and say there cannot be any real weapons.
Right.
Period. Airsoft, fine. You're going to find conventions that have a policy that you cannot have realistic-looking weapons. Like even the airsoft stuff that looks... what we did with that is anything that looks realistic has to go through a security check and be confirmed that, yeah, this is an airsoft. Not only is it an airsoft, it has been rendered inert. So you can't have an airsoft that'll actually shoot a projectile because, I want to say about 1995 or so, there were a lot of airsoft vendors at Comic-Con, and they were all in this one particular area of the floor, and they would spontaneously erupt into airsoft wars on the exhibit floor. It just, full auto airsoft going everywhere. Yeah. Little pellets everywhere.
People getting hurt when they didn't want to be a part of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, major problems with that. And so there was, again, there was the knee-jerk reaction. At that point, nobody was thinking about real weapons. But, all right, we can't have you shooting real projectile weapons, and that had to be expanded to include Nerf, because
Nerf, even though it's foam,
we would have Nerf wars on the mezzanine level. All the different fan clubs would just show up at a particular time and let loose, and so that they were a little bit more kid gloved with that. So, hey, it wasn't like a harsh policy set in place, but hey, would you please not do that, so we don't have to have a policy. Thank you. Edged weapons, of course. There are real swords and knives sold at the convention.
Right.
They have to remain boxed. They cannot be unsheathed.
It seems like it's always the same type of manufacturer at those conventions, though, and it always seems like the kind of novelty
wall
swords.
hangers.
Yeah, the stuff that you find at like the Tiger imports at the mall,
Yes, exactly. Now they have moved in the direction a lot of these places know their crowd, so they show up with replica weapons from movies.
Yeah.
So you can buy the sword from Blade or Lord of the Rings.
Or a keyblade from I said that out loud and then I just immediately blanked.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, though, from that Disney crossover, Kingdom Hearts. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different sword replicas that you can buy at these conventions, and the smarter vendors are bringing those in and making a killing on them. Yep. But
I saw
folks
a vendor
cannot
at
walk
C2E2
around
a couple
with
years
them
ago with Attack on Titan stuff.
Yeah. Now, we do make accommodations for our folks that do the SCA battles, the Society for Creative Anachronisms.
Yep.
So they go full armor, full weaponry, do demonstrations, but they have a special permit. They have special insurance.
They have to keep it to the demonstration.
For that, yes. Yeah. They can walk from the demonstration area to their changing area, and that's it. They can't walk around the floor with the weaponry.
Right.
Lightsabers, even. I mean, there was a time where, and it kind of goes back and forth every year, because you end up with the telephone game a little bit with security. So we'll tell security, you don't need to weapons check lightsabers. They're just plastic sticks, you know. And somewhere down the line, it gets to them, you need to weapons check lightsabers. And you start getting people like, my daughter got hers weapons checked this year. So they actually zip-tied it to her Jedi costume, like to her tabards and to her belt. Oh. So she couldn't hold it.
Yeah.
And, so I got her upstairs and, saw that they had done that to her. I was like, okay, let's first of all, we're going to snip these off. And now I'm going to go call the president of Comic-Con, because this is where he needs to pass the word down, saying, once again, do not worry about lightsabers. They're not sticks. Real.
Yeah.
But that happens every year, every time, and without fail. There's got to be.
Well, it's a huge event. There's so much room for the telephone game.
There is. And we have a great resource. There's one security company that oversees all the rest of them, and so we've got a very smooth channel for information flow, and it's on them to make sure that the information does flow down to the lower levels quickly and effectively, and they're very good at it. So, like, for example, I walk up to a door and I need to get in because I'm a staff person, and Joe Blow, the security officer who's been trained for the day and has never worked Comic-Con before and doesn't know how it works, doesn't want to let me in.
Yeah.
Because he's saying, oh, no, you have to go down to this door here where I've got the badge that gives me access at that door. I then have to call up the supervisor and say, hey, I'm at door such and such. The officer here needs some training on access, and there are staff members who need access right now. And they're very quick. I mean, within 30 seconds. Guy comes right back into the door. Sorry about that. We're just being careful. Not a problem. And as long as they got a good attitude about it, and they're that's fine. There's
but there's so much room for a little bit of miscommunication turns into
and there are people who try to take advantage of that too. Try to get indoors they're not supposed to get in. Try to
They're
get
trying
in
to take
areas.
advantage of the fact that there might be some miscommunication.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so there are folks who every year, there's a guy with a podcast and a video blog that I know of. Every year he crashes Comic-Con and does it on video and then posts it afterwards. Here how I got into Comic-Con.
Oh, he's one of those guys.
Yeah.
He wants to show off how he did it.
Right.
Yeah.
And how long can I get away with being in Comic-Con without a badge? And
have you guys ever like purposefully designated a task force of people to try to find him?
That falls into a category very, very close in. I would say very closely connected with the team of people who have to search out all the badge counterfeiters and the scammers who sell badges online that aren't actual badges. So there's
so much stuff to worry about.
There is a team of people that worry about that and deal with that, and I leave that squarely in their category. They're aware. Obviously somebody puts it out on video. They know his face, they know his name, and he's blacklisted. But with 250,000 people attending every day,
and if you catch him, that's one thing. But if you're actively designating people to try to find him in a way, you're almost encourage him.
Right. You don't want to
giving him validity.
Right.
That's what he
you don't
wants.
want to give too much attention to that.
Yeah.
And there are some folks that. They creatively get into Comic-Con every year, some of them through cosplay.
The classic giant trench coat, one person is on the other person's shoulders gag.
Stuff like, hey, yeah, here's the giant Transformers robot, and there are 3 people that operate it. Maybe one has a badge. Although we've changed the rules around, too, because a lot of these giant costumes don't fit on the floor, so we won't even let them in the doors. So you can go hang around outside.
How high is the ceiling?
The ceiling is massive, but the aisles are not that
gotcha.
big. So we've had people that giant costumes they build, and either they need to make arrangements ahead of time to come in through the loading docks and go out through the loading docks. Like if they're an exhibitor, they've got access back there, and that's not a problem. If they're not an exhibitor and they've just built this giant cosplay and they've not talked to anyone about it, the policy is that large cosplays or large things that could cause a potential fire hazard, the fire marshal reserves the right to say, sorry, you can't go in.
You could block a doorway for humans to get out of a fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the fire marshal always has the right of refusal to make these calls, and he gets to be the bad guy. And by he, I mean the, I don't know, there's got to be at least 100 fire marshals on site, during Comic-Con. They're all over the place.
That being said, it's funny referring to them getting to be the bad guy by telling people that they can't come in. So does anybody show up? Their cosplay is a fire marshal because they're the bad guy.
That would be interesting. I have had people that we've had.
It's almost an internal joke, though.
Yeah, we've had. I don't think I've ever seen somebody cosplay as a fire marshal.
Because I know Dragon Con, you have people show up. Their costume is the carpet. You know.
Yeah.
So
well, we have had people because with the sheer amount of volunteers we've had over the years, and the sheer amount of staff T-shirts that have disappeared over the years.
I see where this is going.
We have people that show up dressed as a staff member, and then when they're questioned about it, they claim, "Oh, I'm cosplaying
as a staff member."
As a staff member.
Oh man, who do they think they're kidding?
Well, I mean, and they'll do stuff like they're cosplaying as a programming staff member with a gray shirt, and they'll just walk right into the back of a program room that's closed because say staff, and they'll walk through. And if it's a rookie security guy out there, they might get away with it. Hall H, they're not getting away with it.
Right.
Like the big halls, Ballroom 20, they're not getting away with it. There are multiple levels of security and staff members who are there to make sure that sort of stuff doesn't happen.
Right.
But you do see stuff like that happening.
Well, hopefully this is an educational experience for listeners, not necessarily an instruction manual on how to sneak into Comic-Con.
Hey, there's
maybe I'll title the episode of the show, gosh. How to Sneak into Comic-Con.
Right. There's
Don't do anything, because you're going to get caught.
You will.
That's the point of this conversation. These are the things you've found, but you can only tell me about these things because you've caught them,
Oh, we've, and it's funny because we keep all these internal memos on things people are not allowed to do at Comic-Con. I've thought about turning it into like a web series, just things I'm not allowed to do at Comic-Con, because you wouldn't think of it, but then somebody does it.
Almost like one of those anti-training videos where it's just a music montage compilation of people failing at things.
Right.
Because you're not supposed to do that.
Right. Like with the cosplay stuff, we actually have to have a policy. It says, no costume is no costume.
Yeah. Yep.
Because we have had every year without fail, people walk in and they might be wearing a cloak and they drop the cloak and they're really not wearing anything. And we had a lady that was wearing a chainmail bikini and nothing.
There's a lot of gaps between the chainmail.
Yes. And this is 2 years ago, and obviously a woman who worked out, maybe late 50s, early 60s, cosplaying as Red Sonja. And, when she dropped her cloak and pulled her sword up and, security was on it instantly.
You got the radio call.
We got the radio call. We're in the Comic-Con office.
I'll check this one too.
And the radio call comes in. There's a group of young ladies wearing nothing but body paint. And we mean nothing but body paint. What do you want us to do? And so one of the higher-ups of Comic-Con gets on the radio, and he says, as discreetly as possible, shuffle them off of the Comic-Con floor to the security office right now, and keep them there, so we can come down and properly document this. And
gotcha.
And then he goes, anybody have cameras that wants to help document this?
Help document it.
A whole bunch of people were like, yeah, we'll go. So they all went down and then said, sorry, we can't let you walk around with no costumes on.
Right.
And you can go walk around downtown. Good luck.
Right.
And, yeah.
At this point, just try to make it back to the hotel room.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So, and they did. They went out there and they, marched themselves in front of a news crew. We got thrown out of Comic-Con, and of course...
Oh, they tried to make it a big deal.
News crew had to, have neck up, and, it was... Yeah, stay classy, San Diego.
Stay classy.
Stay classy. So all sorts of stuff like that. We had a girl for years and years. She was a mainstay of Comic-Con. We called her a duct tape girl, and she just had...
That was
strategically placed duct tape here and there, and that was it. And
that was her costume.
That was her costume, and she led around a guy on a chain who also had duct tape in strategic areas. And so...
that's not related to anything Comic-Con related. That's just
Not that I'm aware
I'm going
of.
to do this and claim it's a costume.
But there are. I will say.
I know there are some weird things.
There are some weird comics out there that don't have a huge readership. They're outside of the mainstream, and I don't really know much about those. We used to have an adult section at Comic-Con years and years ago where you had to show ID, you had to be over 18 to go into this area where they had the naughty stuff. And it grew, it got bigger. And then we'd have these people that their booth would be in the wrong area, and they'd have all this stuff. They'd have to cover up their art, and so at some point a decision was just made, like, do we actually want to have that stuff? Is that really representative of what we want to have?
If we have to put it behind the curtain, do we want it to be involved at all anymore?
Right. And so they just have been careful about not allowing most of that. There is some art that is, shows nudity. There's some art that is definitely pushing the boundaries, but it's, you know how people have a different line of what is tasteful and what isn't. Right. So I'm just glad I'm
try to find that balance between,
I'm not the one that has to fight those battles and argue those arguments.
That's not my job.
It's not my job. It's not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yeah.
I only have to fight that battle in the programming room. So if, like, a few years ago there was a group that so they had a video that they wanted to show during their panel, and supposedly it was approved by my boss at programming, and I should have double checked. And this ended up being like slasher porn. Really, really, we got a few seconds into it and
immediately turned it off.
Oh yeah, I grabbed the disc out of the drive, said, I'm confiscating this. The panel is over. So sorry, you all can leave. And
were the people who were putting on the panel pretty upset?
They were. What do you mean? You can't. I'm like, yes, you are clearly in violation of what you agreed to.
Right.
This is clearly not approved. I can no longer trust you in front of our audience here, so you're done. And there was a woman who was there with me in the room that was also helping run the room, and she was in shock.
That was even shown.
And so she, at this point, she's like, I have a really good mind to sue you.
Right.
For, psychological barrage. So at the point where she started mentioning lawsuit, they up and left. And but and they were banned from Comic-Con for a couple of years. They actually were back this year. I've not heard how their panel went, but yeah, it's interesting stuff.
I don't know. I was talking to Haley on my way out here, and on our way back to her house, and I'm like, this is going to be an interesting show because he has so many interesting things to talk about. I don't know how to add to it. And so I told her, I'm like, it's probably going to be a lot of asking a couple questions and just letting him run because he's got so much interesting stuff to say. But
Comic-Con's definitely got a lot of stuff to speak to.
Well, you're just a very interesting person to talk to. Your interest in music, your experience with Comic-Con, everything, your experience with the San Diego Star Wars Society, just super interesting stuff. That's why I really wanted to have you on the show again. Have a good sit down, have a good talk with you before you moved back across the country, essentially. And I didn't know when I was going to see you again. I didn't know when I was going to have a chance to have a good chat with you again. So
well, I appreciate it. So
hopefully, like we were talking earlier, hopefully we can do something this weekend. I'm out of town next weekend. If you do something next weekend, have fun.
Yeah. I don't know what next weekend's going to look like between having to go pick multiple people up at the airport in Chicago and driving back and the pragmatics of packing. It'll be interesting.
But I really appreciate this. I appreciate
Thanks.
you having me here. How much of this stuff is going with you?
Well, the furniture is staying here.
That's it.
Yeah, all the rest of it's
the rest
mine.
of it's stuff that you put in here that you've been working with.
Yeah, I will leave the the sound abatement material on the walls as well, because I think they painted around it.
So you'll have some white squares.
There'll
on the
be some
wall.
awkward squares left behind, but I mean, there's got to be somebody coming in here after me to do at least a component of what I've been doing for the last couple of years.
Right.
So he'll enjoy having a studio room.
Right.
Yeah, leave the couch here for him.
Yeah.
Taking my chair. Yeah.
Got to take the most comfortable part with you.
Yeah, well, I mean, this chair was the seat in one of my racing cars.
Oh, you
years
turned it into
and years
a chair.
ago, so I turned it into an office chair.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah, and a little geek side note too. It's the same kind of chair that they used for almost every chair on any Star Trek starship from
Really
the Deep Space Nine or Voyager series.
Really?
Yeah, Recaro racing seats.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I absolutely loved Voyager, but I never really got too deep into the set making or what they used, because a lot of the Star Trek sets are just big, square, rectangular, gray with buttons. You know?
Yeah, I'm a big nerd for props, so and set dressing. So yeah, they would just take this chair and recover it in a different color, and there is
That's
your
awesome.
starship seat.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I've learned a lot here. I really don't want to wrap up, but we're probably going to lose footage again if we keep going.
Yeah.
So this is going to be an extra long episode. Normally they're half an hour long.
Oh, okay.
But we got about an hour now. So that's okay. That's okay. Because of that, we're not going to bother with a post show, though. We're just going to keep it the way it is. And yeah, I don't know. I guess we should just wrap up.
Yeah, you can.
So where can people find you online? Do you have a website? Do you have what are your social media handles?
I am a social media whore. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm at Brendan Prout on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I've got a website, it's brendanprout.com, so that people can find me there.
I'll put links to all this in the description.
Yeah. My main website has links to everywhere I'm at on the web too. So, although I write for Worship Leader magazine, so you can find articles there. Yeah.
Okay.
I am out there on the web, that's for sure. Not hard to find.
Good to know. And this is probably not the first podcast you've done before, and definitely not the most professional one you've done, I'm sure. I'm not dogging on the studio. I mean, like, because I never have anything planned for these shows. I just sit down and start talking.
Well, most podcasts I've done have been recorded at a convention of some sort. So it's sit down in the hallway of the hotel room, or in the hallway at Comic-Con, or outside on the porch, or just try to find a quiet area. I did a podcast with someone in the middle of the convention floor. I'm like, how on earth are you going to edit the audio so it's actually going to be usable?
So much background noise.
And I was impressed. They were able to make it happen. So they must have had some really good comb filters or something.
Right.
But, yeah. Fun stuff.
Absolutely. I don't know what else to say. Thank you so much
for
recording with me. I appreciate it. I really, really do. And letting us use your studio too. It's really awesome. Yeah. And I'm all topicked out now.
All right.
I'm sure I could ask a bunch more questions, but I'm just like, yeah, let's just process this and record another episode later down the road.
Stick a fork in it. We're done.
Yep. So thanks everybody for listening. As always, check out the various websites, the various links that I'll have in the description, and we'll see you in the next episode.
All right. Adios.
Adios. Adios to the audio.
Right.
Yeah.